Okay, calm down.
It was amazing to me. I mean, the trial, again, just talking about how much of a show trial it was. Again, there was absolutely no evidence that the government could or had with regard to me. And I was the only individual. And it was established in the trial that there was hundreds of individuals who had access to this operation, even above the level that I had. Yet I was the only one investigated. And just to show how much of a kangaroo court this really was, a key witness for the government during his trial was Condoleezza Rice, who really had no inkling of what this operation was, but she was with the administration at that time. And I think they called her for a couple of reasons. One was to just show a show of supposed legitimacy to the it's like, oh, if one of our former you know, officials is coming to testify, well, of course he's guilty. But I think the other aspect was that, during the trial, I was the only black face in the court. I mean, the government paraded CIA officer after officer, and none of them looked like me. Or I could say I didn't look like any of them. And it was easy for them to, point to say, oh, look, this guy who doesn't look like the others, he's the bad guy. They kept saying he lost his discrimination suit. Well, that was a lie. I didn't lose it. I wasn't allowed to go forward. But Condoleezza, I think, also helped them to say, look, we're
Right.
showing you
We're not
an
racist.
upstanding black citizen as opposed to this guy sitting at the defendant's table. And that's really all she added. That was the only time during the trial that there was the galley was full. The judge was even starstruck, I believe, having Condoleezza Rice in her courtroom. And I think that just showed how much of a joke this was. And how easy it is for the government to do Espionage Act cases because the courts aren't going to question. All they have to say is, well, this is related to national defense, national security. Courts aren't going to question it, especially the Fourth Circuit. So, that's the kind of thing that Assange is facing. And I think it's terrible what he's going through, but it's just going to get worse. And it also shows how the government is using the Espionage Act to reach any and everyone. And one thing about my trial that was really disturbing to me, like during the entire time, there was a question as to whether the reporter James Risen was going to testify. And he, of course, said he would go to jail before testifying about his sources. Well, I didn't care whether he testified or not. I was not his source. So, but what was distressing to me is that during that time, it was no longer the United States versus Jeffrey Sterling. It became the Risen case. So, for the mainstream media, it was more about protecting their own. There was no regard for whether I was innocent or guilty. It was just about protecting their own. And even though the government, through appeals in my case, had won the right to call the reporter and ask any question they wanted, they didn't call him. And then once he was out of danger, there was really no interest in my trial. I mean, how many trials have there been in the US with CIA sources and methods on show for any and everyone to see in a public trial? Yet there was really no interest. I think there was a viewpoint that, well, he'll just, as all others do, plead, and then we'll move on to the next.
Did he try to help you, Risen, like publicize your case?
Not that I know of, but to me, there was nothing really he could have done. If he had gotten on the stand and said that I was his source, well, he would have been lying, but that would have sealed the case, whatever. If he and refused to say anything, well, that wouldn't have stopped the case either. Uh, Early on, after I was indicted, the government was pleading with the judge that unless they were able to call Risen to the stand, they had no case. Well, they had Risen and they refused to call him. So why did they still have a case? That train has started because they're using the Espionage Act. They could pretty much say whatever they want and do whatever they want without any regard to beyond a reasonable doubt. As I've said before, that the only thing that was proven beyond a reasonable doubt in my trial was that I was black. That was it. There really wasn't anything else the government proved, nor that they needed to, because of the leeway and the power they have with bringing such charges. And that's why I say is like we'll see how this bears out with Trump. Are there two different criminal justice systems in this country? I think we all realize that
Yeah, of
there
course.
is. One for us normal citizens and those for the political and financial elite. Yet we'll see. It's on. It should be on stage for us, and the result should be obvious. But I kind of fear that it won't be. So
And just going back to Condoleezza Rice, do you remember what she said? The types of things she said?
she was just reciting that, oh, it was a great operation. It was one of the best operations in a generation. She really had no information about the operation. She did talk about how successful it had been. Um, but really, she didn't know me. She didn't know anyone directly involved in the operation. Um, didn't I mean, it was just more so that she was part of the CIA effort to show that they run good operations. I think they needed to counter the information from the book that was in question to show that they ran good and safe and decent operations. And she was just part of that show. There was really nothing substantive. When I was in law school, I mean, you don't put a witness on a stand unless they add something to your case. The only thing she added, she didn't add anything factually. She didn't add anything substantively. It was for appearance sake only.